oh, well, they're giving money to this person that got written into the plan. How dare they? Hi, this is Jeff Marsachi, the Plain English Attorney, and today we're going to take you on a roller coaster of ethics regarding an attorney who changed Dad's will just before he died. Oh my gosh, this is horrible. Well, wait a minute. Hold on, let's break it down. Let's go ahead and take a look at the post, and this is from Reddit posting r/estate planning. Lawyer edited my father's will without telling any of his children shortly before he passed away. Hello, my father recently passed away, and upon being sent the relevant estate planning documents from his lawyer, we discovered that about 2 months before the lawyer effectively made himself the trust protector, as well as deleting and amending articles involving the powers of the trust protector, as well as other ones pertaining as to who and how the trust was split. My sisters are worried that he's trying to pull something because he's always been a little bit shady. I don't even think the signature is real, and he acted as the notary himself. Should we be worried? What's the worst that he could do? Do I need to find another lawyer to keep him in check? Thanks. IL, by the way, which means Illinois, and edit. Talked to a family friend lawyer who doesn't do estate planning, and their opinion was that the lawyer intends to divert money from the trust to an adopted child of my father who was recently amended into the will. All right. That sounds like, oh, there's a ton of red flags just from the tone. But look, the fact that Dad changed the plan 2 months before he dies doesn't mean, oh my gosh, there's warning bells. How dare the attorney do that? No. There so far is nothing on the surface that's wrong. In fact, the person who's posting this seems to be complaining that the lawyer never informed the children. Well, no. The lawyer is not allowed to just go and tell the children. That's entirely upon Dad. He has an attorney-client privileged communications and relationship. He doesn't go and just tell the kids, well, hey, did you know that Dad changed his will? Well, no. Whether or not to tell the kids is entirely up to Dad. It's his documents, and that's his lawyer. The other thing here is, oh, the lawyer named himself the trust protector. Well, yeah, that's a pretty common thing. What it means, and a trust protector can mean different things. The way we use it in my firm, the trust protector is there to remove a trustee if they're doing something wrong. And they have the power to kind of audit and look in and investigate. And that's really it. That's what we limit it for us. Now, there are other versions of trust protectors which can allow the trust protector to change language in the trust. Usually that's related to law and tax and other things that could change over time just to stay with the intention of the person setting it up. There's nothing really wrong there so far. Again, we're on a roller coaster, so let's see what other twists and turns there are. If you think it's important for educational videos like this to get out there, then please help us out by subscribing to the channel. First comment, absolutely get another lawyer to help administration. But who is the trustee? The lawyer now, upon my father's death. Now that's starting to sound a little more like this might be a revocable living trust, not just a will, even though they said they changed the will. But now the lawyer is the trustee, but he also said the trust protector. All right. Trustee and trust protector are very different roles, and they can't be the same person. Well, no, not really. Can you clarify if there is still a trust protector? And another attorney chimed in, I think you meant to say they shouldn't be the same person because there's no real reason they can't. And that's hitting the nail right on the head. There, as far as I know, there's no legal impediment to the trustee also being the trust protector. Does that mean it's a good idea? No. No. Let's keep going. I was wondering this too. Haha. Kind of defeats the purpose, but then I'm not sure I wholly believe yet that a trust protector is a real thing. Well, that's a joke. They're technically just special power trustees, but everyone seems to think there's some magical anointed person we create. Shrug. Very true. This is just a person who's appointed as a kind of backstop, okay, if something needs to be fixed, we can do it. But they're not the actual trustee managing distributions, handling the paperwork, and, fulfilling the role of making sure everybody gets what they're supposed. No. They're a watchdog that usually just has to be called in. They're not even part of the trust settlement process, usually. It's just if there's something wrong, they're kind of the first person that the beneficiaries can go to make sure that things are going correctly. Right. Not that it's illegal. There's just no point if they are the same person. You can't actually audit yourself. Really good point. And then the original poster. There is a trust protector and a trustee. They are both currently the lawyer. Okay, that's really weird unless the trust protector applies only to any testamentary trust created in the agreement. I don't really see the distinction. It's still the trustee watching over themselves. Trust protector or trustee, completely different roles, different authority, and different purposes. Who is the successor trustee? And again, this might have been, with these comments being a little bit off in timing, but the trust protector, successor trustee, it's the lawyer as well. Do you need another lawyer? What might you think so? And again, this was before that, I think that distinction came out that they were the same exact person. The attorney is the trustee and the trust protector. But this is always good advice. Get a hold of yourself, be rational, and start calling 2 or 3 other estate lawyers for an initial interview. You're going to need to lay out the cold, provable facts, not just your opinions. And that's really kind of getting to the tone of that original post. It's like, oh my gosh, the attorney's running all over the place and doing stuff that, whoa, no. Calm down, get another attorney, get that second opinion and see, did they really do something wrong? Do you, cold provable facts, not just your opinions. Do you have other papers to show? You mentioned we. Do your siblings have other statements or papers to show? Be prepared. This sounds likely to become an adversarial court case, which means money. Regular estate lawyers will call in specialized trial lawyers. Your father's lawyer will be fighting for money, his reputation, his law license. Very true, but now the lawyer is the trustee as well as the trust protector. It's challenging. The document and the role is the trustee. That's one part of it. The second part is, did the lawyer do something unethical? Now you can say, well, the lawyer's, acting shady, or he's always been a little shady. That's a kid's opinion. That's a beneficiary's opinion. That might not have been the actual case and might not have been what Dad was doing. Dad's the one who hired the attorney. That is Dad's attorney. So it might be as bad as you say, or the father's lawyer might be able to demonstrate that the father called and requested the change. Also relevant is what powers the trust protector has. Are they purely administrative powers such that the family has nothing to lose in terms of beneficial interests? I would suggest having an honest conversation with the drafting lawyer to ask some questions before escalating things. The response from the poster: Trustee was given the power to basically sell, retain, transfer, mortgage, etc., anything in the trust in the most recent amendment. Trustee was originally father, then uncle, then lawyer. Okay. Not really anything wrong there. That's pretty standard for a trustee. And that was just backed up. Those are standard fiduciary powers, so that is not in and of itself problematic. Your father's lawyer is not allowed to tell you his estate plan was changed. Again, getting to that attorney-client confidentiality, lawyers have a duty of confidentiality that is owed to their clients, not the children. So that fact alone is meaningless. The key fact is, what did your father want and what did he tell his lawyer? And another poster question: Does a drafting lawyer who is also the trust protector have a duty of confidentiality that would work against the estate personal representative or the trustee? How do you know your father did not request these changes? Again, just putting it out there. The kids seem to think, wait, this is our plan. It's the family plan. How dare you make the change without talking to us? It's not your plan. It's your father's plan. He didn't want any contact with his lawyer at all, but he would keep badgering him into doing things he didn't want to, taking advantage of his poor mental state. All right. Twist and turn of the roller coaster. So now it's not just that dad went and made some changes. It's sounding like the lawyer was turning things around to put himself in a position potentially to make some money as the trustee. Now, again, that's the interpretation of a child who's also a beneficiary of the person who passed on. Maybe it was, look, there are just some big things. Maybe the father called and said, look, I'm having some big concerns about my brother. Again, the uncle was supposed to be the next trustee and the lawyer after that. Here are some things. And the lawyer went, oh gosh, these are big red flags. Look, we need to make these changes. And then dad just kind of sat on it. Again, being a little bit more of a devil's advocate for the attorney, maybe that was the case. On the other hand, it really could have been that the attorney was trying to put himself into a position to make some money as the trustee, not as a beneficiary. Well, contact your own lawyer then. Absolutely. Take every necessary precaution. My daughter's father passed away with a will and trust in place. Her aunt and grandmother, they were so viciously took every cent, paid no attention to her father's last wishes. Look at everything twice, 3 times if necessary. Then the aunt and the grandmother, they robbed the estate. That's something that should be reported and sued over. Definitely. Your fact pattern raises enough red flags for me to recommend your own lawyer. And we're interviewing now. Thanks. Absolutely. All right. Another part. Lawyer edited my father's will without telling any of his children shortly before he passed away. Now, let me just kind of interject here for a second. This is a really good analysis of different points in talking about the ethical things that an attorney has to look at when they're doing estate planning and making this kind of change. So I'm going to focus a little bit on this. Lawyer edited my father's will without telling any of his children shortly before he passed away. The comment part: as a preliminary, no part of this title sounds in any way wrong or untoward. I wouldn't have told you either. That said, let's keep reading. Hello, my father recently passed away, and upon being sent the relevant estate planning documents from his lawyer, we discovered that about 2 months before, the lawyer effectively made himself the trust protector. Comment from the attorney: I'm sorry for your loss. It's pretty normal these days to find attorneys naming themselves as trust protectors these days. I don't know how I feel about it except awkward, but I'll admit to doing it on certain occasions with client knowledge and consent, of course. The cynic says that only attorneys who aren't confident in their work need to rely on such a, frankly, tenuous and made-up role in the trust. But a person with more foresight might say that a trust protector is an acknowledgement of reality, that no trust instrument can be expected to weather all legal changes in perpetuity, and so someone needs to allow the trust to evolve too. And that's the trust protector version that I mentioned where, okay, they could make those changes to administrative or tax things specifically and only so that it can keep the trust evolving with the person who set up the trust's intention. So that's that type of trust protector. Again, usually I'm using the one that's, no, they get to investigate if the trustee is doing something wrong and remove them, and then it drops to the next trustee, which isn't the same person as the trust protector. Up through here, I don't see anything wrong. My opinion as well. As well as deleting and amending articles involving the powers of the trust protector, as well as other ones pertaining as to who and how the trust was split. Now there's some meat. Trust protectors are ordinarily able to amend certain administrative articles, and it's normal that they might. Beneficiary provisions, though, that's starting to sound like more than just protecting the trust. And I think this might have been the original poster saying, yes, they changed this stuff for the trust protector and changed who's getting what. That might be completely not in the same section. My sisters are worried that he's trying to pull something because he's always been a little bit shady. I don't even think the signature is real, and he acted as the notary himself. Nothing wrong with serving as the notary, but if you all had prior concerns with this attorney, that's pointing to seeking counsel of your own at this point. And I mean, that's something that attorneys do all the time. If they're the notary, not a big deal. Most trusts and wills, they have witness signatures too. So it's not just the trust, the person setting it up, the trustor, the grantor. And they're signing, and then there's the notary. Usually there's also witnesses involved, and the notary is there to just say, hey, everybody appeared here and they acknowledged all of this stuff and, quote, swore under oath or affirmed under oath that this is genuine, and they're stamping that. If it doesn't look like Dad's signature, even with, declining health in the last several months, and it's just that attorney's notary stamp, right now things are starting to seem a little fishy. And getting another attorney seems like even more of a good idea, and there probably should be a handwriting expert brought in to make sure if you really think this attorney forged Dad's signature. Should we be worried? What's the worst that he could do? Do I need to find another lawyer to keep him in check? Thanks. I don't know if I'm worried just yet, but it's certainly starting to smell fishy. Getting an attorney would be a good idea. Illinois, by the way. Edit. Talked to a family friend lawyer who doesn't do estate planning, and their opinion was the lawyer intends to divert money from the trust to an adopted child of my father who was recently amended into the will. Yeah, this is definitely fishy. Well, it's fishy if the lawyer is going to be able to change what this adopted child had been getting. If it sounds like, I'm assuming when he says sisters, it's two sisters, so it's the poster, his sister, two sisters, and there's an adopted child. If it's like, okay, everything's split 4 ways, 25% each, and the attorney is going to start taking money away and giving more money to that adopted child, well, yeah, that's definitely fishy. If the person who's posting is saying, oh, well, they're giving money to this person that got written into the plan, how dare they? Well, there's no discretion there for the attorney to actually do that. And now that would be less fishy, but we just don't know. Thank you for the very detailed response. I'll be sure to keep you posted. And this testamentary freedom enters the chat. No idea what that is, but for me, when I posted, look, I read through all this, giving the drafting attorney the benefit of the doubt and seeing nothing drastically out of place until OP mentioned the lawyer made himself both trustee and trust protector. Basically, the fox guarding the hen house. Yes, I'll simply add to get your own attorney at this point, so you'll have a dog. You'll have a dog guarding the fox who's guarding the hen house. And that's really it. There were so many twists here of what could be ethical or not ethical, but I think it was a really good exercise in seeing where does the attorney's loyalties lie, but also taking a look at the way this beneficiary posted it made it sound like this attorney was, oh my gosh, he's completely gone off the rails. Well, no. There's actually a lot of a logical explanation for everything down the line. And while I wouldn't make the trustee and the trust protector the same person, there's nothing illegal about it, but it doesn't hurt to look into it. If you want to learn some more about putting together your own estate plan, then check out our book, Estate Planning Basics, at estateplanningbasicsbook.com, or if you want the audio version with a video read-through part to the audio book, then go to estateplanningbasicsaudiobook.com. So I hope you found that information useful. And as I always tell my clients, please stay safe, plan ahead, and enjoy life. And whatever you do, make it a great day.